Competency-based and ability-based questions form the backbone of nearly every interview process. And there's good reason for this. Interviews work on a very simple principle, that your historic behaviours and your historic actions are a good indication of future behaviour. And by asking these questions, an interviewer can explore your historic experiences and your historic actions in relation to the skills and the requirements of the role they have advertised. More specifically, these questions help an interviewer understand your relevant previous experiences, the skills and knowledge you have used and can evidence using, and the actions you have taken in specific situations. And such questions and your responses to such questions help an interviewer in two ways. First of all, it helps them explore and understand your skills in relation to the advertised role. And secondly, it allows them to collect tangible evidence to support a hiring decision, because ultimately they are going to have to decide who is best suited to fulfill the role based on everyone they're interviewing. As such questions are the backbone of nearly every interview process, you should always expect these questions and you should prepare to answer them for every interview. But what can you actually convey by providing a good response to such a question? Well, first of all, you can demonstrate that you have the required skills to fulfill the role. And there's two ways you can do this. First of all, you can evidence that you have got direct experience of the skills that are required for the new role, and that in your previous roles you have used the skills the recruiter and the interviewer are looking for. Or secondly, you can evidence your potential to fulfill these skills based on your previous experiences. Now let's just explore this one with an example. It's quite often that when we apply for a job and we attend an interview, we are applying for a role that is either a promotion or a step into a new area. And as a result of that, we won't always have the experience that an interviewer is looking for. So we have to demonstrate the potential. So let's consider you're applying for a sales job, and sales jobs often involve working towards demanding targets in a pressurized environment. Now, if you haven't worked in a sales environment before, you may not have evidence of such skills or evidence of such experience in your CV. But what you may have is experience of other high pressurized environments and other demanding deadlines. And you can demonstrate how you worked towards these targets in another situation and thereby demonstrate your ability to work towards demanding sales targets in a high pressurized environment. Your answers to such questions can also demonstrate more than just your suitability for the advertised role. You can demonstrate effective communication by providing good responses to competency-based and ability-based questions. You can demonstrate that you can build rapport with an audience, that you can provide compelling and memorable answers to questions, that you can engage an audience and you can keep an audience interested when you're talking to them, and that you can convey information effectively and ensure it's understood. You can also demonstrate active listening skills by providing good answers to such questions. This may sound a little bit odd, because if you're responding to a question, how do you have to listen? Well, obviously you have to listen and understand the question, but also such questions are normally the start of a conversation. It's highly unlikely that you will answer all of the interviewer's questions or provide all of the evidence an interviewer is looking for in your first response. And they'll ask follow-up questions. And by listening effectively and engaging with questions when asked, you'll demonstrate active listening skills. So your response to a competency-based and ability-based question is your opportunity to demonstrate suitability for the role. You need to ensure your responses are compelling and relevant to the role requirements that you're being interviewed for. You also have to remember that a compelling answer to such a question will allow you to demonstrate effective communication and active listening skills. So what do these questions look like when you're asked them in an interview? Well, interviewers will focus questions on the required skills for a role. Now, the good news is you can normally identify these in advance of an interview, or you can normally identify the areas of questions in advance of an interview. A good job specification will list the essential requirements for a role, and you may be able to have a conversation with recruiting managers, a recruiter, or even people who already work in the department to determine what the essential requirements for the role are. So you can have a good idea of the areas you're going to be asked questions on. It's a little bit more difficult to identify the exact wording of the question. Now, some companies are starting to share example questions in advance of interviews, but it's few and far between at the moment. But you can at least determine the area of questions, and you can look to prepare some practice questions in these areas. So questions are generally of the form: can you give me an example of when you demonstrated such a skill? Or can you talk me through a time when? Describe a situation where. Can you provide an example of when you? Can you share an instance of when you have? There's many permutations of ways of asking this question, but the basic structure of a competency-based and ability-based question is an invitation for you to share part of your past experience and demonstrate suitability for the advertised role. You can usually identify the skills and requirements for the role in advance, and this allows you to prepare competency-based questions for these requirements and practice in advance of an interview. And remember, you've made it to the interview. To get this far, people have seen the potential for you to fulfill this role, so you will have evidence in your past to support and provide good, compelling answers to competency-based ability questions in an interview.